Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alex Sunners. I'm joined here with Roger Bear of the Financial Consulate. And today we're talking about one of your favorite topics, turning your portfolio into a paycheck during retirement.
Every retiree has asked us about this question. So now we're here, ready to retire. How do we turn our retirement income and our portfolio in particular into a paycheck that's going to see us through retirement? Well, we're here to talk about that.
Yeah, and it can be difficult for a lot of people going from a job where they're used to every 2 weeks they get a deposit into their account. When you go into retirement, that doesn't always happen. Now you have to question, well, what do we do now?
How do we do it? What's the process of working through how we convert your retirement income to a paycheck so that you can live a happy, worry-free retirement? So, Alec, let's get started.
Yeah. So one of the first things that we need to talk about before even talking about the distributions from the portfolio is how do we even allocate the portfolio? Is it a mix of stocks and bonds? Are we aggressive? Are we conservative? And I think the answer there is it's a mix of both.
It's a mix of both. I totally agree. So do you want to put all of your portfolio in bonds? Well, bonds don't do a very good job keeping up with inflation. But do you want to put all of your portfolio in stocks? Well, stocks are pretty aggressive. So what do? Well, we kind of split the difference. We make what I like to call a balanced portfolio.
Yeah.
That is a combination of stocks and bonds. So stocks do a good job keeping pace with inflation. They have a lot of capital gain and a little bit of income. And bonds do a very good job of generating income and a little bit of capital gain. And you put those two together, and what you got is a portfolio that is balanced and seems, at least to us, to serve the needs of a retiree.
And every single person is going to have a different allocation in their portfolio based on their age, their risk tolerance, their spending needs. There are a lot of factors that go into it. There's no shoe that's one size fit all in this type of situation.
But we definitely wouldn't want to be at this point in your life as you're thinking about retiring. You don't want to be too aggressive, and definitely you don't want to be too conservative.
And one of the things that, besides stocks and bonds, are alternative investments. These are things that, they don't quite fit the exact situation of a stock, and it's not exactly a bond either. And these type of investments can help keep up with inflation as well as being not as volatile as well.
Absolutely right. We are working to put alternative investments in our portfolios. And what we find is they can enhance the return side of the portfolio while simultaneously dampening volatility. So this is a relatively new feature of our portfolios, but we think it's not only innovative, but very significantly helpful in managing the portfolio of someone in retirement.
Yeah. So let's talk about, all right, we allocate the portfolio. Now we need to collect on that. We need to make that paycheck happen. Where is that return coming from for those distributions? And it's not just price return. It's not just dividends. It's not just interest. It's a combination of all of these things.
Total return. Well, one of the kind of the misnomers here, the idea that gets a little confused is the income that is going to be used out of the portfolio is just not dividends and interest from bonds. The income that's going to be distributed, generated for your paycheck is going to be derived from, as Alex said, from total return. That is the combination of income, dividends, and capital appreciation.
We'll hear a lot of clients say, oh, the S&P 500 was up 10% this year. Well, that 10% isn't just the price return. That is a combination of all of those things.
Of dividends and capital appreciation.
Yeah. So let's start talking about, okay, we see where these distributions are coming from. How much are we taking from the account to make that paycheck that we can resemble what it was like in a person's working career? And that paycheck is going to start with guaranteed income. It's going to start with those pensions if you have them. It's going to start with Social Security. And then any spending needs on top of that, that's when we're going to look to the portfolio to replace any income needs that we have on top of that guaranteed income.
Absolutely. So you begin with, logically, if you will, as Alex said, your guaranteed sources of income, and then back into, if you will, the additional income that you will need from your portfolio. So that's a very important question. How much income do you need from your portfolio? Well, the answer is, well, tell me how much income you will derive from your Social Security and pensions and other guaranteed sources. And then we can say, okay, here's what we need to generate from the portfolio. One thing we got to remember, though, is the portfolio investments are fluctuating in value. So we got to understand that you can count on a certain level of income, but it's a great idea to have some flexibility in terms of how much income you need to take from your portfolio. There are going to be good years and bad years. And so if you can have a little bit of a flexible distribution rate, that will help you weather inevitable market appreciation and depreciation.
Yeah, and as Roger was saying, that flexibility allows you to, you don't need to take from the portfolio if you're not spending that money just to have a regular distribution. If you're not spending as much, you can decrease that distribution. If the market's going up and you say, I want to make this go on this trip, that's a perfect time to say, okay, let's take a little bit extra out of the portfolio to make up that trip.
You definitely don't want to take distributions from the portfolio and save them. I had
Yeah.
a retiree, a widow retiree, who was taking money out of her IRA and paying taxes on it and saving some of it, when in fact we did need to take that money. So it is a mindset, a different mindset, being retired and you're in your distribution phase as opposed to being in your accumulation phase when you're working up to retirement.
Yeah. So we also have to keep in mind that we have to keep ahead of these distributions. We can't just, if we're taking a distribution each month, just sell investments every single month to do that.
That doesn't work.
We gotta have some bucket of cash or money market, something that we can take from that's not going to fluctuate, so that when you're taking these distributions, you're not having to worry about, oh, the market's down 20% and now I'm taking a bunch of money out and selling investments at a loss.
We really love the idea that clients have a robust reserve. Ordinarily, we talk about having 3 months of expenses squirreled away in your reserve funds. Well, maybe as you enter retirement, as you think about retiring, maybe you increase your reserve funds so that as you enter retirement and you get your various cash flows modulated, or if there are down years, you can call on the use of some of your reserve funds instead of, as Alec is saying, digging in, if you will, digging into the portfolio and taking distributions when the market is low. So consider a very robust reserve fund as you enter into, and maybe in the first couple of years of retirement.
Yeah, and because down markets do happen, we would love to avoid them, but we can't. So we need to plan for them and have that in the plan in retirement. The next thing about these portfolio paychecks, as we can call them, is decide what you need that money for. We need to talk about the goals that you have that you're going to use this money for. How much you take as a portfolio paycheck is going to depend on what you need to use that money for, and how much money at the end of your life do you want to leave behind. Because if you say to yourself, hey, I really want to leave money to my kids, well, you're going to want to take less from the portfolio so that at the end of your life, there's more in the portfolio to give to your kids.
Very much. That's exactly right. What are your goals? Do you want to, in the end, leave money to the kids? Then you have to take less money out.
Yeah.
If in fact that is not a goal, then you can take more money out. And maybe you can give money to your children or your heirs or other causes while you are living and leave less to be distributed after after you're dead, not
Yeah.
after you're alive.
Mhm.
But the point is, it's important at the outset to determine what your goals are for your money when you're going to try to pass it on to your heirs.
And it's important to have a plan. And Roger and I, you and I did a webinar a couple months ago about demonstrating the software that we use for our clients, Money Guide Pro.
Money Guide Pro is a very powerful software that we replaced Microsoft Excel with, right? Because we used Excel for many, many years to project retirement values, to try to estimate someone's longevity for their retirement. Because the last thing you want is for your money to run out before you die. Well, Money Guide Pro allows us to try to determine how successful you'll be at achieving your goals in retirement.
Yeah. And that webinar is posted on our website if you're interested in learning more about the software, Money Guide Pro.
Do we have to talk about annuities, Alec? I don't want to talk about it.
We've got to talk about annuities because I think every client that comes in wants to talk about annuities because it's something that everyone has heard about.
Well, they're getting sold annuities. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, hey, I'm going to buy an annuity. Why do they even come up? Well, annuities have a superpower. I'm starting backwards. This is the punchline. So as my grandson would say, what's the superpower? He calls me Pop Pop. Annuities do have a superpower. The silver lining is they can generate guaranteed income. If Alec and I say we're going to guarantee you income, they bust in the door and take us out in the silver bracelets. That's something we cannot do, but something annuities can do. But here's the bottom line. If you don't need another source of guaranteed income, then at least from our point of view, you don't need an annuity. And why do we say that? Well, annuities are expensive. They're complicated. They're a contract with an insurance company, and the insurance company is the house, and the house always wins.
Another thing with annuities is a lot of people hear that they're doing these really complex and cool investments inside the annuity. Typically, that's not the case. And most investments inside an annuity can be done outside the annuity.
Well, I remember clearly hearing about equity index annuities and how great they were going to be. And in concept, they're very powerful. But in looking at the results of equity index annuities, the concept doesn't bear fruit in actual returns. So if you need or want another guaranteed stream of income from a portfolio, then maybe, just maybe, you need an annuity. Otherwise, you don't need annuities. Again, they're complicated and expensive.
Yeah, there's always cases where they are needed, but obviously it's not always the case.
Generally, right. We can do without them.
So we need to talk about risk.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a topic on a lot of people's minds all throughout the year is risk. And there are two different types of risk. We have risk tolerance, and we have risk capacity. Risk tolerance is what you personally can stomach. So if the market's down 20% and that freaks you out, then you might not have a high risk tolerance. Risk capacity, on the other hand, is how much risk you can actually take in the portfolio to still achieve the goals that you have.
Right. So we definitely want to talk about risk. You never want to ignore risk. It's not if there is risk, it's what's the risk. And as Alex said, your tolerance is more about your personality, your willingness to take risk in your portfolio, your willingness to see market fluctuations. And your capacity is really about the dollars and cents.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a big reserve? Do you have a low required return, as we're going to talk about next here? Do you have a very large portfolio? Do you want to spend all your money and not pass it on to the kids?
Yeah.
All of which need to be balanced and feed into your objectives and how your portfolio is managed.
Yeah, both your risk tolerance and the risk capacity is going to impact the return in your portfolio. And one of the things that we need to talk about is sequence of return risk. And that is those 5 years leading up to retirement and those 5 years directly after retirement are very important with the risk that you take. They're so critical because if you take too much risk leading up to retirement and directly after retirement, and that portfolio drops, it's going to take a lot longer to recover that capital than if you didn't take that risk, unnecessary risk.
So personally, I'm within my 5 years preceding retirement, and I'm thinking very seriously about gently reducing the risk in my portfolio for probably the next 10 years.
Yeah.
And again, as Alex said, you are very vulnerable to market fluctuations during that period. And remember, 2022, not 23, we're ending 2023 where we've made good money. But in 2022, it was a market where nothing worked. Those sorts of markets, as Alec has said before, they're going to happen. We can't avoid them. What we've got to do is rig our portfolios for heavy weather all of the time. And in particular, in this 10-year period, 5 years preceding and 5 years after retirement.
And we go back to being flexible during those 5 years before and 5 years after. If you can have a flexible distribution rate, that can really impact the portfolio, and that risk you take can be also directly impacted by the flexibility you have in that portfolio withdrawals.
Definitely.
So how does this impact you? If you had a question, you had a comment, we would love to hear from you. And if you're already a client, you can reach out to your primary advisor. And if you're not a client and you're interested in becoming one, you can either scan this link here on the page now, or you can direct yourself to our website, give us a call, send us an email, fill out the survey. We'd love to hear from you.
To everyone reviewing or viewing this webinar, we hope this has given you some insight on how to work through logically setting up your finances to achieve developing a paycheck in retirement. Remember, as you worked in your working years and you were accumulating years, you might have had a couple of sources of income, two sources of employment income. Into retirement, you're going to have portfolio income, Social Security, pensions, perhaps, so different sources, multiple sources of income. And you have to have some logical way to work through how you change those sources of income into making a paycheck into retirement.
Yeah, yeah. Well, on behalf of Roger, myself, and the entire Financial Consulate team, I hope everybody watching has a happy new year.
Happy New Year, folks. See you in 2024.